Hello and welcome to
Hey, we like your pod.
And we're going to tell you why. Hi, it's Dawn here, and I'm joined as always by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett, and our very special guest tonight, Jon Meerdink. Friends, we are so excited.
So excited.
So excited. We've waited so long to chat with Jon, who has the cutest kid on the planet, by the way. We're so happy you're here to get to know Jon Meerdink with us, audience. He's a Packers writer and podcaster at The Power Sweep. If you aren't familiar, you will be at the end of tonight. Jon is a fantastic writer, storyteller, and all-around media professional. So with that, Jon, how was your week? What's the latest? How's the fam and everything?
Well, I guess I have to say congratulations, first of all, because if I understand correctly, this is episode number 50.
Yes.
It is.
It's a big accomplishment. That's a lot of work. So congratulations to you guys. And I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that we could make it work. Things are good. Just enjoying the last parts of our summer. Just trying to have as much fun outside as we can before things start getting a little bit cooler out. Things are great.
Nice. How was your week, Maddie?
Yeah, it's good. School started today in Cincinnati, so my kid's starting up. The little one is in first grade now, so that's a kind of a big step up for her. Very exciting. And the way how Montessori schools work, she's now like the youngest kid in a group of 3 grades, so grades 1, 2, 3. So a big day here. And with school starting next week at the University of Cincinnati, kind of gearing up for that. Teaching a class this semester, so getting ready for that, and just the sort of like last minute schedule adjustments for the students. So I'm very busy, very fun, very crazy time right now over here. How about you, Dawn? How you doing?
That's crazy. I didn't know you were going to teach a class. What are you teaching this semester?
Yeah. So I work with the undecided students who are trying to figure out like what major to go towards.
Yeah.
The exploratory students, as we call them. So it's a class designed to help them figure that out, and pretty effective. I could go over the numbers, but let's just say that most of the students take the class do have it figured out by the end of the semester, or at the latest, the end of the year. So,
boy, I needed you when I was changing my major every semester. I mean, I think I could be an unexplored student for the rest of my life if that was a major. I loved school. I liked to just learn about everything. I always wanted to go back and get more degrees, but I kept changing my mind too. Yeah, I had fun though. I had fun. That's really neat, Maddie. Well, the NFL 2023 preseason is in week 2. I was not able to see, let me think. Oh yeah, I was able to see the Packers game last week, but I just found out about an hour ago, and I'm really miffed that I'm not going to be able to see it here tomorrow.
I mean, there's always ways, Dawn.
Okay. Well, somebody's going to have to help me with that, because I can't see it on NFL Plus. I can't see it unless I go to YouTube TV. I haven't quite figured that out. Maybe it's on one of the channels too. I haven't checked that out, but I just was looking on the app.
We can talk afterwards. About
okay.
There are ways. There are ways to make sure that you can see the game.
Thank you. I'm so excited about seeing it. I didn't think I thought they looked pretty good. But in the meantime, one of my neighbors, who was not a football fan at all, but she's a loyal listener. Hi, shout out to my neighbor. I won't embarrass her. But she told me she's watching as many preseason games as she can. And she's been texting me like, did you see that? Did you see that? And I'm like running to see whatever she's seeing. Nice. And yeah, she's really looking forward to football this year. So she's in her second week. I told her I gave her the whole preseason schedule. So now she has it. So Jon, what are you most interested in during preseason? I know people, are across all thought waves on whether the preseason matters or not, but what's interests you the most right now?
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth. Sometimes you think, I'm watching this, I'm really learning some things, I'm getting to know some new guys. Other times you just are wondering, like, what am I doing here? Why am I even bothering here? But this season, I find it's really interesting to watch the offensive line. So who's playing? When are they coming on? Are they among the early people on the field, and where are they lining up? And this week, I think really starting to dial in on right guard, see who's getting some opportunities there. It seems kind of like a 3-horse race right now between Royce Newman, Zach Tom, and Jake Hansen, depending on what they do at right tackle, if Elton Jenkins can play. But that's really what I'm most interested to watch, seeing who's dialing in there. And then edge rusher is always fun because you could get some crazy things happening there. It always seems like guys can come out of nowhere on the edge faster than just about any other position, just because it's almost a pure athleticism position, especially as the farther down the roster you get. So that's fun to watch too. So that's really the things that I'm going to be looking for here in week 2. What about you, Matt?
So I've been watching the D line a lot because of all the young power that we have there, and finally having help for Kenny Clark. So kind of watching that opposite side of the trench from you. But I really do wonder, though, John, like when you're watching the O-line, what sorts of things, like micro things, are you looking for, like watching for?
It's hard to watch on TV. It's really hard to pick anything up. Really, I'm just trying to see who gets out there and when, because that's when you're picking up on what kind of the coaches are thinking, like who do they want to see first. The first guy off the bench is super important because he's the guy that's coming in with the quote unquote starters. Sometimes they make a couple of shifts at once, they're right away. But if the Packers are really trying to get a look at a guy, they'll drop him in there with the rest of the quote unquote starters. So that's really the main thing that you watch for, the positional rotations and things like that in the preseason, for me at least. And that seems to bear the most fruit. Beyond that, trying to analyze individual performances in the preseason is hard enough just because guys aren't playing with people they're familiar with, especially on the offensive line. And anything can really happen because you don't really know much about the guys they're going up against. I mean, a guy can look really good, but if he's playing against the second string or third string defensive line and linebackers, I mean, how much credit do you really give them? So really just that rotation is what I watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I like about the preseason, that I've learned to like about it, because years ago I wouldn't even watch the games. They seemed boring and like I didn't really get it. But watching for the who they're putting in when, watching to see the sort of positional battles that are happening and how they play out, and then how the teams look at them afterwards when they break down the film to see like, well, who should we actually keep on the team? I've come to find that extremely fascinating. Like I'm really into the preseason stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you had mentioned like there's that aspect of it, but then of course during the games, for me during the end, it is like, why am I watching this now? Like by the fourth quarter, it's just like the very bottoms of the rosters. Nothing's very exciting. Start to zone out during the fourth quarter for sure.
Well, I even like watching the late portion stuff because when I was in college, I was a radio broadcasting major. I called a lot of games. I called a lot of basketball games. A lot of them weren't very good. I went to a Division III college, a lot of low quality sports happening there. But my dad always said, for one thing, try to put the best stuff on tape that you can, because you never know when you're going to be able to use it audition wise. And second, you've got the opportunity to watch these games and you never know when you're going to see something that you've never seen before. And preseason football is great for that, because you're going to see some weird stuff if you watch preseason football. It's going to get weird. It's going to get ugly. It's not always going to be great, but by golly, it's something you've never seen before. And there's not a lot of opportunities to see stuff like that.
Like that.
I agree. Do you, I worry about injuries preseason because I feel like, I mean, obviously you worry about injuries even during practice, but, both teams might not be on the same page as far as playing their third string and their second string against the second, and it felt like we had way too many injuries last week to make at one injury that takes somebody out for more than a week is way too many for me. But I just saw another super bad injury on tonight's game. It's the Bears and the Seahawks.
Yeah, what was the injury, Don?
I feel like it's I don't know yet. But I feel like it's like a practice. It should be treated like a practice, in that maybe the NFL should come up with some special rules about preseason so that it's more like a practice and the teams need to be on the same page. Do you know what I'm getting at? It's just.
Yeah. Well, I mean, John, you played football. Do you feel like there is merit to the idea of this? These people need to get into like football shape, and these preseason games can help with that. What do you think?
Absolutely. Football shape is a real thing. It's very different from just normal shape, just being ready to go down in and down out, and being kind of in the mindset it takes to play football. That is something that it takes, and it takes some time to get up to speed and feel ready to go for the speed of the game. And sometimes, guys can get into a flow really, really quickly. Think back to the 2011 season, really abbreviated preseason because of the lockout. Packers and Saints coming in week 1. It looks like everybody had been going, all summer long. But the Packers kind of took it slow last preseason, and they came out of the gate pretty slow in Jacksonville against the Saints, and there were some other extenuating factors there too. But football shape is absolutely a real thing.
Yeah, that's true. And I think one of the reporters brought that up to Matt today or yesterday about that thing about laying off during the practices right now. And to answer your question, Matt, I didn't mean to blow that off. I just wasn't sure. It was the guard and the tackle on both sides, and they were both down. And I don't know what the injuries were, but the one was carted off. And so they had to go to a break, and they came back, and they were still both down. And they came back, but the one did walk off, but the one was carted off. And I think it was the Seahawks gentleman who was carted off. But I'm sorry, I don't have names or anything.
Hate to see it. And
I know.
That's the thing about football, right? I mean, I love football so much. I think about it a lot. I can't wait to watch the games, but the injuries, it's hard to deal with, and I think I try to not think about that as much as possible, so that it's maybe the cognitive dissonance of these terrible things happening with this thing that I love. I don't know. That's rough.
No, I'm with you on that. And that's why I didn't watch football for so many years. I just felt it was way too brutal and violent. And I don't know why I can watch it now. I've become desensitized in my old age or whatever, but I love it now. I mean, I still am very sensitive to injuries, no matter who it is. Yeah. So, hey, let's get to know Jon a little bit. Well, one more question. So what you played in football in college? What did you, what position?
Well, I played one season of college football at Northwestern College out in Northwest Iowa, a really small NAIA school, but I played a year of college football there. I was a tight end. I know it probably doesn't come across, just in a web call, but I'm fairly tall.
Okay.
I was really too light to be a college football player, even in college there. But kind of made the basketball player to college football player transition, and it was a fun one season.
Neat. Well, it's an experience,
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And now you talk about it, so it probably gives you some additional dimension to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So, Jon, your Twitter reads Jon Meerdink at Jon Meerdink, husband to Liz, Packers writer and podcaster at the Power Sweep, writer and editor at Acme Packing Company, Ecclesiastes 12:13, and JonMeerdink.com. So, of course, our very first question is super important. Who did you inherit your amazing radio voice from?
I don't really know. A lot of people say that I sound like my dad. Now that I have kids, I hear that coming out a lot more because I hear things that my dad said to me out of my mouth when I talk to my kids. But I think it is probably mostly my dad, especially when I hear myself, if Liz will play back a voicemail that I left her or something like that, I hear a lot of my dad in that. So I think it's probably from my dad.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, what you said there about hearing things that your dad would say come out of your own mouth is a weird thing about parenthood. I have that all the time, things that my mom or dad would say, or teachers that I've had, or just random things like that. It is very strange.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling.
Yeah,
it is. I'm not a parent, but once I got to be about, 55-ish, I started hearing myself say things my mother would say, and then I would say, oh my gosh, I sound just like my mother. And I hear my friends say that. So I think at least with women, it's like an age thing where you hit this age and all of a sudden you're like, oh, she's in my head. She's in my mouth. Okay, well, that's good. So, but was your dad a sports writer as well?
No, he wasn't. And he's still around. I should be careful not to use past tense with him. So he is not a sports writer, but he always encouraged me to do things like that I was interested in.
Cool.
He was a big supporter of everything I did journalism wise and stuff like that. So he was very interested to see me go into stuff like that, and was very supportive and still is very supportive. He loves listening to the podcast. We love talking Packers. I love, especially if the Packers sign a guy that's really unusual in one way or another. I love texting him about that. And yeah, that's a big part of, getting into stuff like this was support for my family, support for my dad, both my parents.
That's a big part of why I'm a Packers fan too, as my own dad from just at a young age, sitting down and watching the games with him. And to this day, I still text with him during the games back and forth. And kind of like you're saying there, like if something comes up in the news, kind of a big development or something, I'm on my phone right away, texting my dad, like, Dad, you hear this? This is huge news. I unfortunately was the one who broke the news to him when Bakhtiari, ruined his knee almost 2 years ago. So that was an unfortunate one, but things like that, I'm often the first one to tell him. And he lives in Wisconsin, so I always feel like I need to break the news faster than he'll just hear it on like the radio or whatever.
Yeah. Yep, that is sort of fun. My dad still lives in Wisconsin too. Both my parents do. They're together. I make it sound like they're not. Like I'm talking about them separately.
Your dad's still with us. Your mom and dad.
My parents are still together. They're still with us. We were just there in Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago, so I know that for sure. But yeah.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
so he's a good mentor and support for you. And so one of the things I didn't write in our script, but I meant to, and I'm going to blurt it out now before I forget. You had a competition where you were sponsoring a new podcast.
Yeah.
And we talked about it here on our show. So who ended up winning?
So the Father Son Packers podcast was the one that won there. We're really excited about getting them rolling. They actually just published their first episode last Sunday after the Packers' first preseason game. So there's a new podcast out there in the world. And it was super exciting to see that play out.
That's great. We were Dawn and I actually spent like half of an episode talking through our thoughts about the different submissions, who we were kind of pulling for, who we're excited about. I was backing those guys. So I'm really glad to hear that they won. Can't wait to listen. Is it just called Father and Son Packers podcast?
Father Son Packers podcast.
So look out for that. Check that out. Yeah. It's
we'll
a really good pitch. So
really good. Okay, well, we're going to have to find them and maybe send that episode to them. Maybe they'll come on the show. Hey, Maddie, that'd be fun.
That'd be great.
Yeah, you should definitely reach out. They're a great. Well, it's a great father-son pair, and it was good to talk to them and help them get that off the ground. So hopefully they have a lot of episodes this year and have a great time.
Cool. Well, congratulations on that. So we do like to hear about origin stories here on Hey Willip. So you mentioned your parents are back in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is no longer with us, but they are from Wisconsin. I'm originally from Wisconsin, so I think we all have that in common here tonight. Would you like to tell us about how you came to love the Packers? Obviously, if you're from Wisconsin, did you grow up there?
Yep, absolutely. Grew up in a little town called Cedar Grove. It's about 10, 15 miles south of Sheboygan on the east side of Wisconsin. It ends up being about an hour south of Green Bay. Getting into the Packers was really kind of a family thing. So I was born in the late 80s when I was really coming to understand what football was and stuff. The Packers were just getting really good in the Holmgren era. The first game I really remember watching is the 1995 NFC Championship game when they lost to the Cowboys that year. But from there, it was just a really, really family-oriented thing. I always joke around, especially to people with Blue 58 who are international listeners who may not, understand some of the cultural stuff. Watching Packers games growing up I always called it second church, like talking about it now.
I've heard
We go to church in the morning, that all wraps up. You come home, get some lunch together. Packers kick off at noon at second church. And usually if it was a noon kickoff, we'd watch the game at our house and go and watch the fourth quarter at my grandparents' house, who lived in the same little small town that we did. Then we'd have dinner with them after that. It was a great thing. And if it was a late game, we would go over, just as it was getting started, have Sunday dinner with them. It was just always a great family thing. And I have a lot of memories of talking about the Packers with them. My grandpa was actually kind of not intentionally, but he was one of the first people other than me and, the guy who helped me launch it, Gary Zillavy, to appear on the podcast as a voice. Because back in 2019, when we visited around Christmas, I sat down with him and my grandma, and we just talked about their history, things like that. And he told me about what it was like growing up watching the Packers and things like that. He can even remember, he could even remember the Don Hudson era in Green Bay. So that was cool to hear about. But just that family connection was what made it really special.
That's so beautiful. Everything about that just makes me so happy. It makes my heart sing. I try to get my girls to watch, with me a little bit. Of course, it takes some attention span to kind of sit and watch, I think, a football game, especially at that age. But yeah, getting family involved is such a big deal. Good story, John. Love it.
It's like we were there with you. And I mean, the way I grew up wasn't all that different. Although I hated football. I was a girl. I don't know if I hated football when I was that little. We used to pretend. I'm much older. We would pretend to, we'd play pretend football, and sometimes my brother would let me play too, because I was the littlest, and everybody would get assigned like a team name. The only one I remember is Bart Starr. But I remember meeting I remember going to practices and being like, oh God, do we have to do that? And that kind of thing. And now it's like, oh yeah, so many things though, not just Packers related that, I did with my parents. I look back and it's like, man, that's epic that they brought me to that, like the Johnny Cash concert and, that kind of thing. So, those are wonderful stories though. I love it. So one of the things we love to hear about, and we kind of touched on this with your dad a little bit, being a big support in what you do, at the Power Sweep and for the community, the Packer community specifically, but so because Hey Willip is all about relationships and about the Packer community and the online NFL community. So we'd love it if you would share how your people, all your people, your family, your friends help and support you to do what you do, because we know that it takes a lot of time to create content, have a podcast, do writing, analysis, and all that. So time to shout those loved ones out.
Sure. Well, the one and only that I really need to shout out is my wife, Liz, without whom this entire operation really wouldn't exist. She was one of the people who said when I launched the Power Suite back in 2016, like, if you're going to do it, like, don't just go halfway. You're like, really, really make a go of it and make the best site that you can, make the best podcast that you can. Just give it the gusto, like, empty the clip, whatever metaphor you want to use, like, really go for it. And she's been, with it through thick and thin ever since then. We're actually going to have her as a guest here in the relatively near future. So keep an ear out fantastic. For that on the show. She's got a really unique perspective on one unique aspect of football that I don't think anybody has ever really talked about within the Packers community. So keep an ear out for that. That's going to be fun. And it's just going to be a fun episode about, again, just a small aspect of football and your football watching experience that I don't think a lot of people have talked about. Her take on it is going to be unique. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, love it.
But she's the big reason that I am able to do all of this, especially on game days, helping keep the kids under control, just being able to watch the games and being tolerant of, especially like in primetime games, being up late recording, living in the Eastern time zone is just the worst when it comes to the East Coast games or, late primetime games. Mm-hmm. So if it's, 2 or 3 in the morning when you finish up recording, she doesn't think that's super weird. And that helps a lot getting it done. And just I couldn't do it without her. And I'm super grateful that she helps me continue to do it. And she does a lot of work behind the scenes too. Helps us make contact with people that we need to get in touch with, helps book guests from time to time. She was the driving force behind us getting Cliff Crystal on the podcast last year. When his big book came out, we were the first people other than the Green Bay Packers to have him on and talk about his book. And she booked that interview. She was a big driving force on that. So I tell her all the time, she's an associate producer on Blue 58, whether she's in the credits or not. And pretty soon she's going to be a part of an episode. So it's very exciting. And, I love her, and I'm really grateful that she continues to support this.
Support from your partner is such an important thing. I'm lucky for that too. My wife is very supportive of me doing this and everything that goes into being a part of the Packers online community. But one of my favorite moments from Blue 58 from the last year was the time when she came on, and I think you didn't even know what she was going to say, right? She came on, she said some really nice stuff, and I think you're kind of like, oh, thank you so much. That was a really beautiful moment for sure. So it shows that she's a special person, definitely.
She is a very special person, and she has a lot of unique things about her that I hope we get to showcase on the show in the future. And she's a driving force behind some of the other things that we want to have going on with the show too. that I hopefully will be able to show here at some point in the near future. And I think you've got a question coming up that I would like to touch on, and a couple of things that we may have coming up here in the near future. So,
all right.
Cool. Well, we love you, Liz. Thank you, because you're just as big of a part as Jon is, even though he's out in the forefront and we see him. We know you're there. I love that you have it in your bio, that's the first thing you have listed in your bio. I just think that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's intentional because, I want to be clear about, the Packers stuff is secondary. And if there's ever a conflict between the Packers or the podcast and family stuff comes first. I mean,
100%.
It's always going to be the first thing because, not to get too melancholy, but I think a lot about the end of Blue 58 and the end of the power sweep, and it's nowhere like, I don't want to freak anybody out. It's not going to end anytime soon.
Good.
But this is not something that I'm going to do forever. But I'm going to be a dad forever, and I'm going to be a husband forever. So I want to make sure that that's always a priority. At some point, this show is going to end. Like, I'm not going to be able to do it anymore, or not going to want to do it anymore. And I'm going to move on. I'm going to do something else. But I'm always going to be a dad and a husband, and I want to make sure that's always a priority. So that's a very intentional thing that I do there, and I want to make sure that's clear in the content that comes out too.
Yeah.
Well said. Absolutely.
Very, very good. Well, we love to ask about our beloved NFL and Packers online community, and we'd love to ask one thing you love most and one thing you would change if you had the ability to change it.
So the thing that I love most is how international it is. This is not something that I expected starting Blue 58, but when things really started to grow with the podcast, when you see where the downloads come from, the growth market for the show back in 2018 or so, 2017, 2018, when it really started to take off, wasn't primarily in the United States. It was overseas, specifically Sweden. There is a huge amount of football fans in general in Sweden, and Packers fans in particular. So I love how international the Packers fan base truly is. And I think the NFL as a whole is going more international as it was, but it seems I don't have a ton of experience with fans from other fan bases, being international, but the Packers sure seem to have a lot of international support. And I've made a lot of good connections with people from around the world through the podcast, just interacting with people online. And that is awesome. I think that is so cool, especially, the European viewers who are up not just late for primetime games, but for every game up in the middle of the night or up super early. That's just awesome.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I could change about the Packers online community and just, I guess, the content creation community in general, it would be to try new things. We need to expand beyond the kinds of shows that we're creating right now, the kinds of media that we're doing right now. I think there's a lot of opportunity to do different sorts of podcasts and different sorts of just, writing and things like that. I think too many people, when they try to get into doing stuff like this, want to do like an analysis show, or they want to do, game breakdowns and things like that, or watch film and stuff like that. That's all good. But a lot of people are doing that already, and people have such unique perspectives. Why not try to do something different? I would love to see, a website devoted to tracking like a single player through every game of a single season, or like just trying to come up with a different slant on a podcast. What's a different way that you could look at the Packers? What if you had somebody who sat down and reviewed every uniform matchup from, the NFL on a given week, or just the Packers, or little quirks on uniforms and things like that. Heck, I wrote a blog post years ago now exclusively about the gloves that Jared Boykin wore in Packers games.
Yeah.
Potentially of interest only to me, but that's something that people need to explore a little bit.
Right.
You never know when you're going to stumble across something that's of interest. Maybe you think it's of interest only to you, but it actually is of interest to a lot of people. So I think people should try new things, get weird, try some stuff that seems out of the box, because there's an opportunity out there for different kinds of shows. I'm not super ready to talk about them yet, but I have a couple ideas that I would like to try with some maybe an entirely new podcast, maybe some different types of shows that we release in the Blue 58 feed. Would love to do some more, produced sort of shows, scripted things, because Blue 58 is semi-scripted. But if I could change anything about the Packers community, it would be that people would try some new and different things when it comes to covering the Packers. Your show is a good example of that, but we need more of that.
That's the thing that that Dusty has said to me a couple of times, and I was like, finding what you're really enjoy, what you're good at, finding your lane, your place in the community is such an important thing. Yeah, I feel like we have kind of found that. I'm not like a brilliant football mind, but a very enthusiastic person who consumes a lot of content. So definitely just leaning into that, and Don, of course, same, as a very positive, enthusiastic person. We found that lane for sure. That's a really good point. Yeah, more people finding more lanes, more things that could be really interesting for sure.
Just get weird.
Just get weird. Totally. I mean,
yeah, get weird and not try to be Andy Herman Jr. or Jon Meerdink Jr. Just be yourself and find your lane. Like I mean, the uniform. When you said the uniform, I'm like, I used to be in fashion and costume design, so that was interesting. Like I could totally get into that or do that segment on our show for that or whatever. But
yeah, there you go.
You're right. You can find little niches where people are interested in, because there's so much to the NFL.
So I actually meant to mention this back when you were talking about the scholarship content or a scholarship contest. So one of the things that I've repeated time and time again on the podcast is an experience that I had in 2010, 2011. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I was going through the process of figuring out a college major, and I had landed on journalism. I wanted to be a journalism major, but I wasn't sure what to do, just starting out. So I picked like half a dozen people that I liked in sports media, and I wrote to them, I emailed to them, and I just said, what does it take to get started doing something like this? I wrote to Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk. That's what it is. There's too many of them. There's Pro Football Rep.
Yeah. Right.
Wrote to him. He and I had corresponded a few times. He never wrote back. I wrote to a couple ESPN reporters, some lower level ones, some guys who cover just the Packers. They never wrote back. And then I wrote to Paul Lucas, who runs uniwatch.com, who was then an ESPN writer. He had launched his site. I said, what does it take to make it as a journalist? He was the only person who wrote back, and he wrote back and said, write stuff that you would read. Write as though you're the only person who wants to read it.
Right.
Write stuff that is of interest to you, and make the best story that you can make about something that's of interest to you. And that is kind of where my original Packer site, Packer Perspective, came about from. That's where the Power Sweep was born. That's where Blue 58 came from. And I hope I've passed that on to some other people. So if anybody's listening to this and you feel like you need permission to go out and create something, like this is the sign. Go and do it. Make stuff that is of interest to you.
Yep.
And get out there and give it a shot.
Yeah.
Two things kind of I want to say in reaction to that. The first is that I was daunted by the idea of starting the podcast with Dawn when she approached me to do it. I was like, who am I? What? Why are you even asking me? But I'm so glad we did it, and took the step to get it going. And I mean, of course, again, as I say all the time, a lot of the credit goes to Dawn for all the work that she has put into it. But it's been amazing. It's been an amazing experience doing this for the last year and getting to our 50th episode. So definitely just want to echo that. And the other thing is that what you're talking about there, John, about just finding a thing that you would want to read or hear, getting into doing that is so much like what I do with the students I work with who are undeclared, and helping them to find what is the thing they just want to learn more about, and focusing on that for a major and going in that direction. Because if you're doing something that you enjoy, it's going to bear really good fruit. And so just like that, if you're talking about something you enjoy, if you're writing about something you enjoy, it's going to bring people to it. It's going to be something that people want to hear because of the enthusiasm and the care and the attention and the love you'll put into it. So really good point.
Yeah. It's a blast to do. And I'm glad to hopefully continue to communicate that enthusiasm to people as we continue to make episodes.
Yeah. And Matt, we just came together over we appreciated the content creators so much. And I feel like there's just so much to get through. So why not have a show just where we bring up what we liked for the week, and maybe that'll help some people out to kind of fine tune their, it can be overwhelming to not just Packers, but the whole NFL, to learn to know who to follow or who you want to follow. And you don't have to always follow the same people. In fact, this week, I'm going to talk about somebody that we've never talked about before, because I try really hard, at least once a week, to grab a new content creator. So it's not, okay, well, we know who Dawn and Matt like. It's been a year now. We have our favorites. we can't help it. We're all going to have our favorites, but that doesn't mean we don't listen to other creators, and shows also will evolve over time. So you might listen to somebody a year later and be like, oh, I really like this now, or I liked it better then, or whatever. So great advice, Jon.
And not everything has to last forever either. I think that's something that people feel like the burdened by, like I got to start this podcast and keep it going forever. I didn't find one of my favorite podcasts, The History of Rome, until it was already over. And it was fun. Like I knew the ending was coming, and it was fun to get to like the fourth or fifth to last episode when he was just like, hey, I'm just going to let you know this show's ending because I don't want to do it anymore. We're getting to a point where I think that I've said all I need to say and it's going to be done. So it's going to be over and you're going to have to deal with that. But just understanding, hey, things can have a time where you're doing that and then you can go do something else. And the worst that happens is nobody listens or reads it. So who cares?
I know that. Yeah. I tend to approach everything that way. So when I was like, I want to do a podcast, I asked my sister and she's like, no way. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll have to find somebody. And then about a month later, I was like, hey, Maddie. It's not like I put a ton of thought into it before I asked you, Matt. I was like, I don't know. What do you want to do?
Right. Like, let's just do something. I don't know what it's going to be. Let's
I just wanted to see, where it would go. And it went. So, yeah, that's really cool. Well, we're so glad you're spending time and dropping these little words of wisdom, Jon. So, and I'm really happy to be able to see you in person here. And so those who are watching us live tonight on video or replaying, you can see us on YouTube and Facebook and on our Twitter page. You can see Jon in person if you haven't already. Do you do your podcast as a video as well?
I do not. I prefer to stay off video if at all possible. It's my radio roots. And I just the studio is not super aesthetically pleasing. I have the best angle for you here, and I had to doctor that up a little bit before I came to the camera. But it's basically just a corner of my basement. So there's not a lot to see. So I try to stay off camera as much as possible.
Well, thanks for gracing us with your presence tonight. We're really glad to see you. So, now we're going to transition on over to our superlatives for the week, Jon. And I understand you might have brought one or two, or I don't know how many you have or what you have. So everybody, it's a surprise to me just as much as it is to you. What do you have for a superlative this week?
I have three of them. I've got a best, I've got a best, a worst, and a best. So nice. my first best is best name. And I want to give out best name to Zach Tom. So one of my first loves in football was Ron Cox of the Green Bay Packers, who was with the team for the 1996 season. And I always loved him because he had a 3-letter last name. And that just, I thought, looked so funny on the back of a jersey, just 3 letters. And I've always loved 3-letter last names in sports since then.
Okay.
And he was my first love there. Just a random thing. And now Zach Tom, a guy with 2 first names and 3 letters on the back. It's cool.
Yeah.
My worst is worst number. And I'm handing that out to Danny Davis, a wide receiver wearing number 20. I understand that it's probably out of his control. The Packers had a lot of wide receivers around, but we got to get him a better number than number 20. I understand that the uniform rules are different now in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I've even been a supporter of things going a little bit crazier on the uniform front and number front with things like that. But we got to be able to do better than 20 on a wide receiver. It just doesn't work for me, and it looks too weird. And I thought just giving me flashbacks of Kevin King being out there on offense, and it just gets a visceral gut reaction. It's like something bad has happened. Kevin King is out there to catch a pass that shouldn't be. So Danny Davis, we got to get you another uniform number.
Mm-hmm. It is not a sleek, fast number at all. It's a very clunky, sort of like earth-grounded number.
If you're 20, you got to be like a 5'7" running back who just has ridiculous speed, or a defensive back who only returns punts and kicks. You can't be like a possession wide receiver and wear 20. It just doesn't seem right. And finally, I like to give podcast recommendations every so often in our Discord server and on Blue 58. So I thought I would give a best random podcast shout out to the Tooth and Claw podcast. That is a podcast all about animal attacks. My wife and I have recently gotten into it, and it's just an absolute blast to hear about these crazy stories from all over the world. We just recently listened to one about a series of snake attacks in India, which were absolutely crazy. They've got all sorts of different animals, spiders, snakes, grizzly bears. It's wild, and it's a lot of fun, especially the stories where people survive and go on to tell their story about, here's how I did it, here's how I got out of the wild situation. Grizzly bear. So definitely check that out if you need something non-Packers to listen to. The Tooth and Claw podcast.
Not heard of that one. That sounds like a good time for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I love that so much. I was watching animal attacks today and yesterday video on YouTube.
It's timely then.
One was this kitten. It was like a short on video. But I won't go into it. But one really freaked me out because it was like is it the copperhead that has the shape of the head that goes like that, like a diamond head? It was a diamond head.
Aha, there you go.
Anyway, going after a kitten. The little kitten was on a porch and in a little kitten box, and the kitten won. The cat won. Anyway, yeah. Oh, that sounds great, John. I love it. I love it.
For everybody, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I'll have to get that link from you. Well, I'll find it. And so all of John's links that he mentions, all of John's superlatives will be mentioned in the links in the show description after the show. So
there you go.
What do you have, Maddie?
Sorry. So I have 2, Dawn. How many do you have?
I have 3.
Okay. Let's go back and forth. You do the first one. Okay.
Oh gosh, you did it to me again. I love it when he does it. Okay. All right, this one's easy. Most huge and concise.
Most huge.
Most huge and concise. It's the Sideline Scoop NFL with Luke Beller. He's a YouTuber. The podcast, the episode name was "This Is Huge for the Packers," and it was about the return of Jenkins, Watson, and Tanya off the pup list, and it was just nice and short and concise. And he's got a lot of followers on YouTube. And I just like the way he kind of just gets to the point, no nonsense. And then also in this, I just wanted to say a sad farewell to his dog, Packer, who used to join him on all his YouTubes, who he had to say goodbye to this week. So I felt like I needed to mention, I do watch him every once in a while because YouTube is really good about feeding you similar content. So you're not just getting the same thing over and over again. So I'm always finding new crazy things on YouTube. So shout out to Luke and Packer.
So what's the name of his show or his channel? What is it again?
Sideline Scoop NFL.
Sideline Scoop. Mm-hmm. So is it always about Packer stuff, or is it various teams he covers and talks about?
He's a Packer fan. Mm-hmm. So it's mostly Packers.
Most Packers? Okay. I figured it maybe might be from the dog's name, but I wasn't totally sure. So
he's from Texas. Yeah, from the dog's name. What was your first hint? Yeah, he's from Texas, interestingly. So yeah. He has a nice, well-rounded, clean approach to his content. Nice. I like it. Very well done. Young man. Cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right on. Well, my first one, I was struggling to find it really an appropriately huge enough sounding, kind of ring for this superlative. So I'm going with Simply the Beast, which is a little cheesy. And this is going to the aforementioned Dusty. You know how it is on these episodes, Don? When Dusty comes up once, he's going to be mentioned like 50 times.
Yeah.
Hey, Dusty, this is one of those episodes, guy. So, this week, I don't even have the numbers in front of me. I was going to try to find them before, but it's like, I think he wrote 20 articles, did 30 videos and 2 lives, basically. Yeah. He put out a crazy amount of content, and as always, it's all really, really good. I myself have gone through about half of it. And I don't know if I have the time to kind of finish everything up, especially the 2 lives. They're both like an hour and a half long. I watched a lot of the one with Sam, and it is 2 brilliant minds talking about football. It's just phenomenal. So yeah, just a massive shout out to Dusty for all the stuff that he's putting out there, and the thing that just blows my mind is how generous it is of him and you, John, and anybody else who's like making content that's just out there, for us to just consume. It's so generous. It's so wonderful. We are beyond blessed as Packers fans with all of the content that's out there for us to enjoy. So 100%. Huge shout out.
I don't know how guys like Dusty do it, just the amount of stuff that he cranks out. Like, I think I put out a lot of stuff. I mean, I do at least 2 podcasts a week, a couple articles in there and stuff like that. But like, Dusty is just crushing it. And there's a bunch of other guys out there who do just as much as he does, if not more. And that's like, not that it's a competition, but just the amount of stuff that people produce is staggering. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's such a high level too, which is like, that's part of what just blows me away.
Mm-hmm.
Such good stuff.
And the thing about Dusty is he always has time for you. Like if you reach out and you have a question or something, he's still, he's just not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to see posts where people are saying, thank you, Dusty, for helping me like do this thing, get this podcast off the ground, choose this microphone, do this, whatever random thing. So, good dude. It's a good dude.
Yeah. By the way, I did just check. I forgot I was going to check earlier. It was Damian Lewis who was carted off. It was an ankle injury from the Seahawks, and Caleb Johnson with a knee injury. And it was the same play. So, but that's all I know. Yeah.
Hopefully nothing too serious.
I hope so. Carting off but if it's an ankle, you got to be carted off. You're not going to walk.
You're going to walk on that. Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes they make them walk when they have a knee injury. And I'm thinking, just get a stretcher or something. Do something. Yeah. All right. So most disgusting.
All right. very
I'm going to talk about NFL law. I know I had to do a pause there. I'm going to talk about law a little bit more.
Okay.
MMQB NFL podcast, Monday Morning Quarterback podcast. They have a bunch of hosts. I'm not going to go through the names. I'll put it in the notes. But they were talking about one of my favorites. One of my favorite subjects, which is Dan Snyder, and they were talking, and I was just trying to pick up on what's going on, and they said, "What's the metaphor?" They were chatting with one another, so it was kind of spontaneous. He was trying to talk about this situation, and I'll explain. But he said, "What's the metaphor? Like when there were 30 other team owners going to vote Daniel Snyder out, since he obviously doesn't possess enough humility to step down." And so then they kind of went back and forth, the three of them. I don't know if he'll ever feel that level of shame, but I wonder how high the temperature is going to get turned up on him. They were dropping metaphors. I don't think they even realized they had like 20 metaphors by the time the conversation ended. I think the owners want him out, but want him out without having to vote him out. So that'll be interesting. Yeah. What's the metaphor I'm looking for? This guy pipes in, my dishwasher in my college sink in college, right? And it's like the first time in your life that you live with some roommates and someone isn't doing your dishes for you and they start to pile up and we can't physically use the sink and somebody's going to have to wash these dishes and you figure out ways to just shove more stuff into the sink. And then it just keeps getting higher and higher until one day we just say, let's throw away all the dishes until it turns into other guy pipes in like a Jenga tower. Another metaphor. And they're like, yeah, right. You don't want to be the one who puts the dish on the top of the bunch of the others. And, it's like a Jenga tower and they're all going to fall over and create a big mess. Anyway, so somebody at some point would have to take the trash out. Mm-hmm. And that was another metaphor. And it would turn into the same concept where everybody's literally placing trash on top of the can and trying to make sure that it doesn't spill all over the place. This, Dan Snyder, if you're listening, and I hope you are.
He might be. Sure. Why not?
You never know, out there
out
on
his
yacht,
yeah.
out his yacht in the south of France. No, he's actually back, which I'm going to get to next. Anyway, so the moral of the story: wash your dishes, take out the trash, or this Jenga tower will collapse before Snyder and the likes of him ruins the entire NFL enterprise. So, yeah, he's the guy. Really, one of the reasons they don't think he's going anywhere and he's going to get by with all this nonsense is because he's got dirt on all the other owners. So yeah, I mean, that's how bad it is. It's bad.
I think they're going about this the entire wrong way. The wrong way to go about this, if you're dealing with somebody like Dan Snyder, is to say, hey, Dan, you need to step down. We need you to do the right thing and step down. Wrong way to do it. He's never going to do the right thing. What you need to say is, Dan, look at how much the Denver Broncos just sold for. Do you realize how much money you could make if you sold Washington right now? Yeah. It's inconceivable. Washington's a much better market than Denver. Think how much money you could make. Mm-hmm. That's how you get him to get out of the NFL. Yes. That's the interest you have to appeal to. He has no interest in doing the right thing. That's very clear about Dan Snyder.
Yeah,
get him to do the thing he's motivated by.
Exactly.
And that's money.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Yeah, that makes me think of my days as a teacher, public schools, how to get what you need from principals. Think about like, what do they want and how can I get what I want along with that? So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you got to wonder what's going on back there. Then that my next superlative after you do yours, Maddie, is kind of leads into this one too. It's just really there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff hopefully going on. Like we hope it's going on, or maybe it's just like let them all wear themselves out worrying about it until it blows over and something else comes up. Yeah,
hard to know if anything is happening. Mm-hmm. All right, so my other one, this is kind of corny that I'm bringing this up, Jonathan, so you're here, but it's one about you, man. So there was a moment in the podcast from later in the week where you talked about a good way to approach a situation where people have different opinions about a thing is to think like, what would it take for you to see things from the other person's side? You talk about Jordan Love specifically, but then you brought it to like it's a broader thing, a good approach to take when you're talking to people. And that really hit home for me. I thought that was just really great life advice, something that we could all, learn from to just be better, smarter people. So the superlative specifically is best life advice. Going to you, John, for that nugget on that episode. I thought that was really great.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I got to say, it's not entirely altruistic, that life advice, because it's also actually a great time saver because it lets you know what people you should actually spend time having conversations with. Mm-hmm. Because if you ask somebody like, what would it take for you to change your mind on this? And they give you some just unreasonably high standard, just wash your hands and move on. Like it's not gonna be worth your time to talk to them. But if it's somebody who's like says, okay, I'll level with you here, well, then you can have a meaningful conversation. But it's a good way to figure out who is worth talking to and who should just be ignored.
Yeah.
I mean, and I used to be kind of on Facebook a fair amount a couple of years back, and it got to the point where I found I was just arguing with people, and it wasn't doing anything; it was just making me frustrated and wasting my time. And so I think if I'd had that mindset, a few years back, I could have used that approach and saved myself a lot of energy, a lot of bile, a lot of just time, really. So that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yep. It is helpful.
Thank you. Very wise man, John. Very wise man.
Let's not go too far there. A couple of things I've picked up. But
yeah.
I don't know if I can accept very wise.
Okay.
Moderately wise, man.
Moderately wise for your age. Okay.
There you go.
We can agree on that one.
Okay.
All right, Don, what's your last one?
Okay, so this is kind of an interesting article I came across. I'm calling it the best kept secret. So whatever happened with that Dan Snyder deposition? Sorry, I'm still on Dan Snyder. But I'm going to touch on Deshaun Watson. So, yay.
It's good. Really all the hits.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Anyway, I am interested. This was by Dave McKenna from his website. I forgot what his website was called, but the link is going to be in there. Actually, I can tell you right now. No, I can't. Defector.com. Okay. So we were talking about how Dan Snyder was floating around in the south of France on his yacht to avoid a subpoena by our Congress to testify about the goings on, let's just say, at his organization, the Washington, now where they're known as the Commanders. Mm-hmm. And so he finally decided he would come home. He wanted to come home and watch some football, I guess, since he owns a team. And so he agreed to testify, but it was done in secret. And the transcripts still have not been released. And it was 11 hours of testimony. Yeah. And so it's still under wraps. And this has almost been a month. It's going on a month. So that house of cards, or dirty dishes, whatever we want to call it, it remains standing. And I'm calling that the NFL is the house of cards because, But anyway, this cool article, so whatever happened with that Dan Snyder deposition was more about what's going on with Deshaun Watson. And if you're listening to this show on a regular basis, I talk about a lot of different lawsuits and things that are going on and how they're affecting one another. And some of them are even connected, but people don't realize it just yet, like Gruden and I forgot the gentleman's name, Flores. And
Brian Flores.
Yeah. Anywho, so basically this article that he wrote on Defector.com was how Deshaun Watson, that whole debacle helped Snyder, because people are only focusing on one thing, understandably, and also helped Goodell, right? And also, I mentioned a couple times how I wondered why they were going through, we're going to have this judge look at Deshaun's, and then we're going to send it to another judge, and they're going to, and they're changing the times and the fines and this and that. And then the players union still can come up and appeal the decision. So it's still not over. So as long as we're focused on that one thing and putting, people are putting all their anger and emotions on Watson, Snyder's just like, okay, bye, I'm done,
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know. And this makes me really angry. It makes me really, really, really angry. So, and then of course, meanwhile, John Gruden's lawsuit continues to plod forward slowly, but the way the courts work and everything works, who knows when that's going to all come out. So yeah, it's just, it's an interesting article. This stuff isn't just me in my conspiracy theory tendencies. There are other people writing about this too. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. So it is kind of a house of cards, and enjoy the game, but just know that there's this like crazy organization behind, and all these owners behind these teams, and it's kind of messy, and it could actually come down one day, but I don't know, maybe it won't.
Dawn, I have a question that you might be able to answer with a little bit more legal perspective. You mentioned that the deposition from July 28th is still under wraps, and you the way that you said that made it sound like that's unusual. Why is that, and how do things usually play out with things like this?
Right. Well, it's unusual because he was asked or invited with Goodell to speak publicly in front of the what's it called, the House
whatever committee it was, right?
Yeah, the committee. And so Goodell's was public, is available and was available live when it was going on, and somehow or another he hid on his yacht, and then his lawyers must have negotiated to have his testimony be private. It's because it's really, quite frankly, dirty, nasty information that they're discussing. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't want it to be public. I don't know how they got by with it. Or to what degree they think he was honest. I know there was one congressional member who said they listened to maybe one of the 11 hours and said he seemed to be forthcoming during that time, but 11 hours on the hot seat. So I don't know if it's just all for show. It's really hard to say when you're dealing with somebody with that much money and power, what to expect. But I certainly would like to see, I'd like them to release the video of it, but transcripts will work too. Mm-hmm. I would literally dedicate time and read the transcript over a period of time out loud on YouTube. I follow a new lawyer. I have a new lawyer that I follow every week.
That's true.
And she's really great. She reads transcripts, and she reads things that are really boring, that are parts of cases, but they're really important, but you would never want to sit down and read them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's almost like listening to a podcast. I can be doing other things, and she's reading it, so I don't have to read it. Mm-hmm. And it's like a real service, Mm-hmm. I would do that with that 11-hour transcript and find what I could. I probably could get people to help me do it. Might take a few months, but yeah. So yeah, he wants it hidden. He negotiated. I don't know what the deal is, if it's for X amount of time, but I think it's going to be for long enough time where they think people aren't paying attention anymore.
Got it.
And the thing about him selling the team, he's already spent a boatload of money in Virginia to build a new stadium. He bought the property. I can't remember how many millions he spent on that, but that was only a couple months. That was just before he took off for France. It was right before they got invited, and then subpoenaed to testify before Congress. And so I don't know I guess he could sell the property or whatever, but he's invested a lot in moving the Commanders to Virginia too.
Got it.
New stadium. Yeah. Sure. So it doesn't look like he's planning to go. When I heard that he bought that, I was like, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's a fool's errand to even ask him to sell, but that would be the one way I could think of to get him out of the NFL is appeal to his financial interests. Like say, hey, you could make It's a quick $5 billion or whatever it is.
Yeah. Or, there's been some talk about how really Goodell would have to organize all the other owners and do it like that if he really wanted to do it. But does he really want to do it? And what does he know about Goodell? And, it's just, it's a very small group of people.
Yeah.
With a lot of money and a lot of power.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that sunshine and rainbow, sorry everyone.
On that note,
it's reality. So any bonus or final thoughts, John? And before we start heading out to our lives for the evening?
I'm really grateful that you guys had me on. Congratulations again on 50 episodes. Thanks for thinking of me, and thanks for having me on. I guess that's the last thing that I would say.
All right, and thanks for being here. We really appreciate it, John. For as often as you come up in Dawn and my conversations, it's really good to have the chance to actually talk to you, interact with you, meet you.
Sure.
So appreciate the time, my dude.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Excellent. So, Dawn, any other thoughts from you before I wrap it up?
I think that's it. We'll just have to get together after the show, and you can tell me how I can watch that game tomorrow night. Because
not that I would ever use such means, of course, no, or could ever be traced to doing it. But I can tell you about some things I may have heard of. So here we go, friends. Make sure you're following Jon Meerdink on Twitter, so that you know it's John without an H, Jon. And then Meerdink is Meerdink. Is that like a Dutch name or something, John?
It is. The town of Cedar Grove was founded by Dutch immigrants. My great several greats grandfather, Gerrit Hendrik Meerdink, settled outside of what is now Cedar Grove way back in the 1860s. And you can actually go see his original farmstead outside of Cedar Grove with the 2.5 foot tall iron letters GHM still on the front. So it still exists there. It's very cool. But yes, wow. It's a Dutch last name.
That is neat. There's the town of Pickett in Wisconsin, kind of up near, what would it be? Near Prairie du Chien, not Prairie du Chien, but kind of on the way to Appleton.
Sure.
I think that's a lot of my descendants in there actually. So yeah, things in Wisconsin.
Yeah. There's some fun historical nuggets from that part of Wisconsin. There's Cedar Grove, where I'm from, and then there's the little town of Oostburg, a little bit further north than that. But both have descendants from this ship that burned and sank right off the coast in Lake Michigan. There, it has the worst name for a boat ever. It's called the Phoenix. And can you believe it? A boat called the Phoenix caught on fire and sank. And then the Dutch people, being what they were, they came ashore and said, "It's as good as anywhere. Let's start here." So there's another little bonus historical nugget there. And if you go to the Cedar Grove Public Library, you can see a model of the Phoenix there as well. So
wow.
Oh, very cool.
Yep.
All these little nuggets. I love it.
So friends, make sure you are following Jon Meerdink on Twitter, checking out his podcast Blue 58, checking out his writing on the Acme Packing Company website. Of course, Dawn learned this week the difference between that and the Acme Packers podcast. Different ventures, both excellent, but a lot of good writing on there, John. Between you and Justice and Tex, all really good contributions. So
yep. A lot of smart minds there.
Yes, no doubt. And of course, you'll find links in our show description for everyone we mentioned, so please check it out. Whether you're a super fan or content creator, we'd love to have a chance to interview you. So if you're a subscriber to our DMs, or if our subscriber, that is, our DMs are open, hey whoop, and on all the social platforms, we'd love to hear from you or someone you'd like to nominate to be a guest on our podcast this year. And folks, when you subscribe to our podcast, you help us to keep spreading the love in our community. And the best way to help this podcast grow is by sharing it with your friends and family.
Yes, Maddie, that's right. We love you. We're so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL. We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod. And we look forward to seeing you next week on
Hey, we like your pod.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.